to bruise, that's right.
Welcome back to What Have You. I'm Rachel Jankovic.
I'm Becca Merkel.
Yep. Here we are.
Still quarantined.
Sometimes right before we push record, we say, do you know what we should talk about? And I say, nah, just push it. And then sometimes that works just fine. And other times we just draw a blank.
And actually, I think everyone should be duly warned that we've already spent like an hour on the phone together this morning. So I'm not really sure.
Sometimes
we might have talked it out.
Sometimes that takes the wind right on out of it.
We've already said the things.
I was just telling Becca that sometimes in my life, my ignorance in certain fields doesn't trouble me. And right now I'm in a time where my ignorance of the bird life is just kind of hurting my conscience. Like, I'm seeing so many birds that I have no idea what they are.
Well,
no clue.
You're out living amongst them a lot more.
Yes, but why are they all, like, there was an enormous one. I even am using my bird identifier app all the time and considered purchasing binoculars. Because I just can't bear it that I have no clue what they even are.
Rach, there's little clubs for people like you.
I know. No, there's not. There's little
Yes,
clubs
there
for the
is.
people who are way ahead of me on this. Like, I can't get into a club with this little qualifications. I go to...
Go find out if there's a master class.
Oh, no. I'm getting emails about them. I'm getting emails from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. Because what I do is I find out that there's a huge field that I know nothing about, and then I begin dabbling about the edges of it. We did identify the birds I couldn't figure out by our house. That was exciting. That they're called Says Phoebes, and they have a really pretty little songbird, and they do an amazing like hover while they hunt for bugs. So they fly. They're flapping their wings, but not going anywhere. They do this amazing, like, it's very pretty. And then they dart down. And I feel like it's just like God to make something that eats flies beautiful and singing. You know, like, anyways, figured that out. But then I'm behind Winco yesterday. And I wasn't behind it. I was on the road. I was not lurking behind the grocery store.
You were going to
I was driving
shuffle through the dumpster.
on my way past the back of Winco and I thought it was an enormous owl in the tree.
Okay.
I pulled over because I was like, there's actually a huge owl in the tree right there.
Let's find out.
But I mean huge, like, it was huge. Not a little squatty body owl. Like, it was a big old dude. And I got out of the car to take a picture of it. It didn't have an owl's head at all. It had a little head. What is that?
Some owls have little heads.
It wasn't an owl. It had like a little hawk-like head, but in a bird that was really tremendously large. and I'm like quickly consulting my Cornell bird identifier, and guess what it tells me? It tells me that maybe it's a duck. I was like, it's not a duck. Not a duck. I don't know what this is, but I know that much.
You're like, it doesn't look like a duck, nor does it quack like a duck. It's not a duck.
I can't identify the dang thing, and I think I need binoculars because the app tells me, but I'm going to have to wear them all the time because...
Just around your neck.
Yeah, because the app told me that it's always like you can pick 3 colors that are presented on the bird. Well, I don't always know if that was gray or if it was buff or if it was khaki. So I
feel like you're going to need to...
it's a little stressful.
You're going to have to enroll in something, Rach. Because
I know. My ignorance is
it's
painful.
Really being an issue. But my issue in that regard right now is entirely surrounding plants and a little bit sourdough. Everyone, I have a successful percolating thing. Yep. I'm going to try and make my first loaf tomorrow because I think it's gotten enough of a routine.
One of my early loaves of sourdough. And actually, I happen to remember that I was very funny about this on a podcast episode that we threw away. Because I think we met together too late at night and we were just a little too slap happy and weird.
Sometimes that's
but
bad.
I made an early loaf, one of my earlier loaves that came out looking like the backside of a really poor old saggy lazy boy. Where it had like weird sort of voluminous lumps. and it sort of shriveled in and sagged. It was terrible. Anyways, just...
Well, I'm prepared for it to be sorrowful tomorrow, but
there's
I'm
no
trying.
reason. One great thing about sourdough is that sometimes even if it looks like a dog, it tastes really fine.
Yeah, we'll see.
I mean, there are
We'll
ways
see.
of ruining it. You can leave the salt out. That is a way of getting yourself up a creek.
I'm trying not to worry too much yet about when I have to go back to school. Because we're going back to school, guys. Not this next week, but the week after.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm worrying already about what will happen to my sourdough starter. But
Actually, I'll give you tips. By the time you get there, it'll be fine.
yeah, I'll try and sort it
because
out.
I have been exploring the other approaches with sourdough.
Yeah, but you can't tell me yet because I won't
tell you yet, but my point is that it will work around your schedule. Like sourdough just will work with you.
Well,
So
we'll
long
hope.
as you still feed it,
We'll hope. So,
which I recommend.
but meanwhile, you guys, the garden. I've been out plugging around in the garden for the last couple days, and it's like
garden.
it's not good. We had this little corner of the yard that looked like a small corner. It was the sunniest corner that we had. It was like between a sidewalk, and the driveway. So we were like, well, it's already quarantined off over there, so we'll just put up a little fence and do a garden because it was the sunniest corner. So we
should
put
have
up.
picked a different word back. It wasn't
Yeah,
quarantined.
it was. It was
cordoned.
It was self-isolating.
Cordoned off.
And it was over there. So we put up a little fence, and suddenly, I'm like, I have a ranch. This is not a small amount of space. This is like a really big area to fit a bunch of stuff. Anyway, then after we had built the raised beds and put in some brick paths and built a fence, the neighbors cut down this enormous row of pine trees, which is a real blessing because they were huge pine trees that took up a big chunk of our
Huge and
yard.
dastardly pine trees.
Yeah, but now we have a backyard that's full sun all day, and our garden.
That's right.
Our garden is like, we just decided to try to grow tomatoes here underneath a maple tree. And it's directly...
This is a terrible coarse
It's
jest.
under
I have a terrible
maple
coarse
tree.
jest.
Well, let me just say that maple trees drop those little helicopters like every 10 minutes. And like, I have a maple tree farm. I have to go out and pull out hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of little wee maple trees out of my garden beds all the time because they're just... Anyway, so that's my garden struggle.
Well, my garden struggle is that we have all these acres that are not ready for a garden because of lots of reasons. But every time I'm like, here's a raspberry bush that I bought. And then I'm like, we're going to need to rent a bulldozer first. we're going to back up.
Yeah.
Wait, what are we doing? And so I'm trying to figure that out. But the part that's the worst is that we're pretty high up and there's a lot of wind up there.
Today, in particular.
Some days, obviously, it's not super windy, but you can't plant things that you can't assume they won't get beaten alive by the wind several times. So I'm trying to kind of make a plan, which has led multiple times. This is a terrible coarse jest, and yet it still makes me laugh that multiple times I have found myself Googling how to break wind in the garden.
Rachel, that's not all right. Come up with a new phrase.
I have such an innocent mind that I don't think of it until I'm like well into Googling. separated from Diet Coke. It was a horrific thing, though. And
I just had a whole mouthful of Diet Coke. That was a battle just now.
Well, my problem is that every time
I
I'm
did
like,
not spray Diet Coke.
I need to think about how to handle this, and I can't figure out how we
Rachel,
talk about this.
Let's just call it a windbreak from now on.
Except for I was trying to search. I understand. Now I search about windy area gardening.
Or just garden windbreaks. Just keep
I told you it was my innocent mind that keeps leading me this way.
It's not okay.
Well,
It's not okay.
It's because windbreak is not a verb, and so when you're looking for
No, but you don't have to say how to. You can just say garden windbreak.
well, it's not better if you leave out the how to.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
If you say windbreak as
No,
one word,
you end up searching something like breaking wind around the house. Very easy.
no, you don't. This is the worst. We've got to pull out of this terrible slump
I'm
of...
so sorry. I never should have brought it up.
No.
Oh, shoot. Okay, well, anyways, the point is that I think I have a long and difficult road in more ways than one with trying to deal with this. But I have that little level spot on the south side of the house that's right out the basement door that gets tons of sun. Like, it's a beautiful, perfect location for a garden. And I think it would be ideal because I just need to get
There's kind of a natural windbreak right there anyway.
not so much, but
Well, because it's over the hill more.
the wind comes from two different directions with our house.
Oh.
So some of the time the house would be helping. When it is in the winter, it comes more from the mountain, but in the summer it comes this way.
I have to... Oh, my word. I'm sorry. This is very hard to pivot out. But here's what I want to say, is that I was reminded of this by what you just said. Grace Agenda.
Yes.
Everyone, we told you to come to Grace Agenda. I'm like, you can all come see for yourselves whatever Rachel's windbreak turns out to be.
And you know what? When you come, bring a binocular because you're not going to know what's happening with the bird life.
So here's the thing.
As I don't.
Let's go through the update, because this update, basically, I plan on being fully flattened in August by this. So here's what happens, guys.
We thought that it wasn't exciting enough
No.
in April.
Actually,
so we
isn't right
planned
now
a pandemic.
No, isn't right now when it was going to be?
Yeah.
Okay, so it would have been right now, but it's not right now. And it has been postponed. If you were going to come right now, you should still come back in August. Now, here's what's happening in August. We will be having Grace Agenda. So that's already a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
And Rachel's totally going to have you over to come look at her south slope where she's going to grow something.
Where, Lord willing, we would have found a way to shelter in place our garden.
Yeah. But it's also right when NSA is getting going again. And they had to postpone graduation for this year's seniors. So graduation is going to be happening in August. So we're going to have that big party going. It's also convocation for the beginning of the school year. So there's going to be that big party. There's this, the president's dinner, which is the
that got
winemaker's dinner. That's always right before graduation. So that's happening. That's the one where I end up making all the,
so
like,
you're postponing
linens.
it to August?
It's all the same. So it's
just going to be more like a week of splendor?
It's a week of splendor. But these are all the things that, like...
doggy!
So the president's dinner is the one where I do the linens for the table, you know, like the different designed linens for the table. So that's always the thing. Then I am in charge of the reception for graduation.
I like that the big feature of that wine dinner is
no.
I'm in charge of the linens.
I'm telling you how it affects me in my personal life.
I understand.
I'm in charge of the reception for both graduation and convocation, and I'm usually doing the linens for the president's dinner and its Grace agenda all in the same week, you guys.
Basically, Becca's inviting you to come and stand on the sidelines while she runs past you, and you can hand her like orange wedges or Gatorade chews.
That'll be good. And then I'll hand you
Dixie cups of
an interesting
Gatorade.
dessert somewhere at a reception. But actually, no, I'll have a lot of help, which is good. So I'm going to try and hand off a bunch of that, because basically it's all of the big events crammed into 1 week. But it's going to be really fun, and August in Moscow is actually, it's going to be great. I think it's going to be a really fun thing.
August is a fun time, but
so you can see all the things if you come to Moscow then. So come to Moscow then.
So, and hopefully the really exciting news is that you'll be able to see people.
Yeah.
You'll be able to
It'll be great.
Lord willing, we'll be gathering
I know.
in some places.
I know. But I feel like August is a great time to come to Moscow, and it'll be before the U of I students are back, so it's still...
See? Do you know what that is?
Still get a
Did you know what bird that
hotel
is?
room. I can't see a bird.
It's up there. In the tree.
I can't see it.
Yeah. You
I'm
don't know
opening
either.
the sunroof.
You are also ignorant of bird life.
I see a bird. Rach, there's a woodpecker at my house. I will let you come over and look at it.
All right.
So anyway, that is what I was just thinking we need to give everyone an update about that. You should definitely come. Rachel will have you to her house. We'll do a what have you reception. We'll do a who knows what. We'll
do a who knows what for
who
what have
knows
you.
what have you. What?
Oh, mercy.
Anyways.
So, I turned into a quilter since last time we spoke. I've been on a quilting binge.
We already talked about your quilting
Yeah,
last
we
time.
talked about that. I'm saying I finished. Look, I'll show you the picture.
Mom showed me the picture. It's
Oh,
really cute.
Well, I don't have to show you the picture, but it is cute.
It's very cute.
Fun and wild. And I haven't swapped with other people yet, but it is fun. We'll have to share the picture of this. And then I started a new quilt because that's how I am. One of my kids was like, "So are you into quilting now?" And
Oh, that's cute.
I was like, "Oh no." And I thought, well,
Maybe.
clearly I am. clearly I am doing something.
That's very fun.
Anyways, it's fun. I've always had it's a textile thing, I think. I think it's just yarn, fabric, blankets. It's all the things I like all in one place.
It's very fun.
So when is this bread loaf going to take off for you, Becca?
I am supposed to get my little sourdough starter
You're gonna do 11?
out and do 11 tonight. So I fed it this morning.
Mm-hmm.
I'll make 11 tonight. We'll see if I produce myself a nice
I think you're going to be so excited.
squash of a pancakey loaf tomorrow.
Oh,
but
it's going to be really fun.
I know. We'll see if it's good.
I've been on a binge of using different flours. I like working with a different flour.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always preferred Gold Medal all-purpose flour.
Okay.
And I use King Arthur bread flour.
Yeah.
But I really it wasn't until I was making sourdough that I really started enjoying the fact that sourdough is so simple that you really taste the different flour.
Sure.
And it changes the texture and it changes, and there's so much variety.
That's always
just
really
from
fun.
Using different flours.
Speaking of flour, everyone, last week I said I have 3 drawers in my kitchen, but one of them is a big pull-out bin of flour that holds 25 pounds, which is very exciting. And Ben is working on the other one, so I'm going to have one for regular flour, all-purpose, and one for bread flour. And another one that's divided in half for some of those lesser flours that you don't use as often.
Which ones are those?
For me?
Yeah.
That would be whole wheat or semolina,
Do you use that much semolina? I just
no,
have a
because
jar of semolina.
I might put oats there because oats you use in baking a lot. Look at that bird, though.
Yeah, see, I'm telling you, we don't know what's what, do we?
It looks like it has a fan on its head, like some kind of a little
see, I told you,
fan.
we're ignorant. And it's troubling. And there it is, too far away from us, sitting on a dirt pile. And we don't have binoculars because
Rachel's-
we're not the kind of people
No.
who know.
No, Rachel's little quest is starting to rub off on me clearly because I'm like, yeah, it's got like a
Well,
little.
there's
blonde
something
fan on
there's
its head.
something offensive about not knowing. Like,
Well,
we've lived here our whole lives. That's the part that gets
I'm going
me
to
down.
tell you a sick thought. You can't look up your Collins bird app.
Collins. It's not Collins.
So, yeah, she is. She's looking up a bird.
What do you think? It's between a
Oh my
robin and
goodness.
a sparrow.
We can't put people through this,
I
Rachel.
don't. Just keep talking.
sorry, that was an off-topic weird
in my
tangent.
worm nurturing to just have weird times about it because I'm not attracted to it, but nonetheless,
Yes, you are.
yeah. But it's
You've
a
been
weird.
thinking about this for years, Rach.
Yeah. Well, we would get down. I mean, last night we were rooting around in there to see what the worms were doing, and it's pretty funny how it's pretty amazing. The stuff that's in that bin is now this like decadent. I mean, like it was like old bananas and eggshells, and now it's just this decadent black dirt.
Yeah, it's pretty weird.
Yeah,
Pretty
I
weird.
find myself kind of pondering
Well,
life.
You know, when I'm out, like,
But they're also they're quite hellish. I mean,
Yeah.
like, because
Oh,
that's the thing.
the worm does not die.
Yeah,
The
it's not
fire
a
is
good, it's
quenched.
not a good thing where the worm
No.
does not die. So when you
No.
have a little hellscape in your back foyer, you're like, yep, there it is.
I know. I'm always just really amazed whenever I go out in the garden and you actually get down and start digging around in there.
Mm-hmm.
It's just really, I don't know. You start really thinking, how on earth you put two little seeds that look exactly the same right next to each other in the
Totally
same
other
dirt,
things. Yeah.
and one of them can come out with a, ridiculous.
And they never mess themselves. They don't mess up. They
No,
just
but
do it.
The thing that gets me is the color. Like, you can get some like crazy
Well, flavor, because how does
purple-
an onion?
An
An onion arises
jalapeno.
from the dirt that's the same dirt as a raspberry.
Yeah,
It's amazing.
It's
And
very odd.
what's really funny is that if you just take a mouthful of dirt, it's not a taste sensation.
No,
You
but
would
then
think
you're
that
kind
it
of
would-
like,
You would
honestly,
think that the dirt would just blow your face off with all the potential flavors,
Yeah.
but it doesn't.
it does not. But it's like, I don't know how it is that we
I've
don't
eaten
believe in magic, because that's
No.
nothing but
And
magic.
I ate dirt as a child. I specifically
Yeah.
remember trying to cook it on my hot tricycle seat with Julie Busby to see if we were like, well, if we cook it, it'll be fine if we eat it. So we cooked it on the tricycle seat, which tells you about how sharp we were. But my point is simply that wouldn't you think that with all that potential,
Yeah.
that there must be so much flavor in the dirt, because
Yeah.
how does a minuscule seed
Have all that.
have everything
Yeah.
it takes to turn
Yeah.
the dirt into something spicy?
It's like dirt and the giant ball of fire in the sky
And just air
and just air
and
that-
water, which is
that
also not
falls
a
out of the sky for some reason.
yeah.
It's
And
then
I
here it
love
comes.
that in a world that's that magical, that pompous humans act like we know what's happening. Like we're like, well, the reason it's like this. is
I'll tell
because-
you, we've been having church in a drive-in service the last 2 weeks. And I felt like this last week we got out of, some people who wanted to, got out of their cars to kneel for the confession.
Mhm.
Did you find that strangely moving?
Incredibly moving.
But-
Turns out that
Like to
a
be
bunch of
actually
people
just
kneeling outside
but just
is
on
a
the dirt.
different sensation.
yeah, like on the ground, like
And
it
dust,
was
just straight
just
dust and
right
dirt,
there
yeah.
on the ground, and I was like, you wouldn't think that it would make such a difference to be in the building or out of it, but it did. I was like,
did.
this is wow.
Yeah, and same with everybody lifting hands afterwards, standing.
Yeah.
There's something very different about doing it outside.
Yeah.
But we are it was a full worship service, so it was
Yeah.
everything that we do in worship, and it was.
Yeah,
It's been really
It's
sweet
crazy.
doing it outside.
Yeah.
The only addition is honking. The cars and
I know.
honking is unique
it is.
to the situation. Yeah, but that's been Yeah, I agree. There was something really different about
Yeah.
that. But part of that is that it's so good for us to peel back all the things that we assume and don't think are shakeable, kind of. You know, like the things that you, and at least for us in worship, peeling back all of that, all of the routine has just brought out the basics, right? The real evangelical, we love the Lord, we gather because we're his people, we're here to worship, and that it's not because this is the way we do it, or it's not that, it's because we believe this, and whatever it takes, we're going to do it.
Yeah.
And I love that. That's been
cool.
It's been a really sweet thing. Plus, when having to go without gathering for a couple weeks made it so sweet.
Yep.
To when you usually are seeing people all the time, it's easy to not notice what a gift that is.
So true.
To see people.
So true.
So, yeah, mostly I'm going to be really stoked to get to the end of this because I feel like I cannot get in a rhythm, and that's just, if you watch a hurdler running, there is a rhythm of steps that's how you find your stride and you get I feel like I've been doing a world where the hurdles are now spaced oddly and at different heights, and you have no idea what you're doing, and you are mostly just really self-aware of how ineffective you are. I feel like that's been my main takeaway, is that, man, I am not good at this. This is not my and really dumb little things that mess it up a lot for me.
It's funny because I've been having maybe almost the opposite problem of the sort of slowed down thing is making me feel a little disoriented when I sat down and I was telling Ben this last week. I sat down to plan my menu for the week and do the grocery list. So I got a cup of coffee and I went and sat down in the living room and started to make my list, and I just had this internal sensation get going, Becca, you're not working, you've got to get something done here. And I'm like, but I am actually, but it was this weird feeling that if I'm not in a big hustle, then I'm not actually working. So I think that's actually been really quite healthy.
That is.
Having the just kind of that's kind of a fun,
it's not that I'm not
thing.
having that sensation so much, but we're in really different phases of life with our family people. But I really have just felt more I think I usually use. I think it's where there's always a range of days where you feel really effective and days when you're not feeling really effective. There's always that range. And I feel like the range just expanded to a girth that I don't recognize. Where I'm because I know how to handle it when I have a not super productive day. I know kind of you have ways that you sort of rev up for the next, where you get your, I don't know, you're always kind of staying in that little zone, and the zone is not the same now. And that part to me is not, it's it doesn't feel like it's worth trying to make a life schedule around this weird time.
But even when we go back to school, it's going to still be weird because it's a modified schedule.
And
the
still
days are gonna
still no sports or assemblies.
The days are gonna end earlier than normal, and then it's only gonna be for another
not very long
month. I mean, and then we're gonna be in summer. So
when does school get out?
The 22nd for the elementary and the 29th.
My problem
secondary.
is more that I think I'm usually veering, or I don't know. This is an interesting thing. But I will say this, though. This is the thing that is always important. And it feels more applicable, not in this moment to me, but maybe it's applicable to someone. When you have that wildly productive day where you had tons of energy, you nailed it, you got the whole house clean, you prepped all the stuff, you were on a mission and focused, and it just came together for you. Sometimes that happens after you've been doing tons of prep work for a long time, so then that day is the day when you harvest everything, kind of and but it feels like you did it all that day, but really you were just not doing it all that day. But I find the biggest temptation with those days is to try to make it your new normal.
Oh, yeah.
The minute you get a soaring success, you're like, that's what every day should be.
Yeah.
And then you end up being like discontent and no fun on other days that actually are productive but just normal. Like there's like the normal and then the exceptional.
Yep.
Anyways, that's what I think I meant by my normal zone, is some kind of a life cycle of rhythms of the regular trudgy days combined with the really productive days that where you feel like, okay, I kind of understand this cycle. Right now I'm just it feels like in a endless loop of odd jobs. Like I don't recognize any of it. But that's okay.
Yeah.
We'll
get
come
through it. Yeah. And then I'm curious what things stick with us and what things we shook off and what things are.
It does seem like our country cannot just go back to thinking, like I was shocked. Like really there's a lot about the coronavirus that was a surprise. One of those things to me that was really shocking was canceling all the sports. And I only say that because it is, in a bad way, that is a real god in our country.
It is, yeah.
So to have people who are really thick in the idolatry of those things be willing to throw the idols overboard, it's like both, like it's weird because there's a strange mashup of you feeling like that wasn't necessary.
I think
but
what we found out is the true idol, the highest idol, is our self.
Is our life. Like we are so fearful that we can't. Yeah, but it did feel like I was shocked that some of that just without, almost without comment or discussion, we just tossed it all.
Yeah.
Like last thing we care about is March Madness, which did not feel like how it really was.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was sort of like, really? As a country, we're ready to do that. Anyways, that was a surprise. But I do wonder if people will actually be ready to come back as full throttle into that again, or if this lapse is going to
full throttle.
Right. Like, was this actually was this a moment that actually broke some of that idol worship, or was this a moment that will fuel it all the more so? Who knows? We'll find out.
Question.
We'll find out later.
My personal prediction is those sneeze guards are here to stay in the grocery stores.
Yeah. I just think it's just a great reminder that civilizations fall, and they fall for incredibly tiny reasons sometimes.
Well,
and this tiny reason is that we are no match for a virus.
But I noticed in the Bible reading today this amazing line because I tried to highlight it in my app, but my app does not highlight well. It gets really difficult. But it was something about, because I'm going to have to look it up. It was basically because you had no regard for the blood of others, blood will pursue you. Or so the terror of blood will pursue you.
Yeah, we deserve that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was so on the nose. I felt like the blood guilt of our country is so vast.
And yet we're so
we're terrified of dying. And
just in acting as though death is so I think that's what's interesting is the masquerading that death is our enemy. Because I was telling Luke this, because anytime you're tracking health concerns, some of this, and just to be clear, I'm not following I've long since stopped reading news reports about this. But one thing I have felt is overwhelming is that you cannot believe anyone right now. No matter which article you're reading, you can't believe it. You don't know what is happening for reals, which is why it's boring to keep reading them. But the thing that I thought was really interesting is, if you watch, isn't it the Johns Hopkins site that has big throbbing red dots, that everything about the way they're tracking it communicates horror and danger.
Yeah.
Right? You're gonna die from this red growing dot that is coming to your area.
Yeah.
And everything about it is sensational in that way. But as we're driving, like U of I is canceled, right? I was like, just imagine if people were tracking like STDs like this.
Oh, I know.
Like, have you been concerned about what's happening on your college campus?
Right.
Well, we're not interested in the health concerns surrounding that kind of thing, right? Like, we don't want to know, like, how pervasive it is. Well, like, every year here between Idaho and Pullman, a drunk student falls out of a window somewhere,
Dies.
right? Alcohol.
Like, yeah.
Like, death by alcohol is all over
It's
the
common.
campuses.
Yep.
And STDs and health ailments of by death loving living, right? Like that is commonplace.
Oh, yeah.
But we don't, it's like a culture that loves death trying to pretend it doesn't in some other area. Like with abortion, with all of the pursuit of self and it's just tragic. But they're in this area acting like death is really their enemy.
Well, but it's also this hilarious inconsistency with the secular agenda and worldview because, honestly, one thing is, haven't we all been screaming about overpopulation? So wouldn't a massive sweep through of taking out elderly and weak people...
Shouldn't we be pleased?
Doesn't that cut right with the grain of natural selection, survival of the fittest, and dealing with overpopulation? And those are all things that everyone would talk about with a straight face.
But
then the minute it shows up, or at least threaten to show up, or whatever it was,
they borrow
did,
back a Christian worldview
they
and value life.
Freak out.
Yeah,
freak out.
They're like, well, it doesn't matter if it's an old or a infirm person with comorbidities. It's a human life, and you're like, you borrowed back Christian principles to value human life
in order
like
to
that.
get scared and stampede.
Right, in order to do something weird, you're trading out your philosophy for something else.
Because the thing is like the left really has talked quite a lot about overpopulation really scaring us all, and look at how bad it is, and look how bad it is for the earth.
Well,
so
it's
I would think
like
Corona would have been their best friend.
Yeah,
but
Dad has always pointed that out about in a pro-choice world where everyone says it is a woman's right to just murder a baby inside of her. We are deeply offended by pregnant women smoking.
Yeah.
They're like, why do you do that?
Or drinking.
Yeah, or drinking, or like, how dare you?
Yeah. The thing is,
you've snuck back in.
I think the key is when people are talking about overpopulation and how we need to deal with that, and when they get really outraged at us for having lots of children.
They want to control the measures.
Well, they would like to weed out population, but they never consider it might be them. Yeah. And that's, I think, the real key to this problem is, oh no, I might catch it. And that's when we discover they care less about the planet than they care about their
themselves.
Life.
Just about themselves. Anyways, it is a really... See?
What?
Where we are bird watching again.
Well, I'm not.
I was.
I can't even see a bird. Oh, there's a bird.
Yeah, they're just... anyways, that was a real derail there of the point. But the idea, but the reality is that the secular world has no excuse for what they're doing. And the Christians have no excuse for letting the secular world lead their own response to times of crisis and
or
issues.
Lead their attitude of like the fear. I mean, isn't that the one thing that we all understand about Christianity is we don't fear death now?
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying run out and lick all the doorknobs, just, but at the same time, we shouldn't fear death. Like, the unbelievers have every reason to be terrified.
No, and
death.
At the end of the day, every Christian should always be able to say, if I die, I die.
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
Like, it's like, if I die, I know where I'm going. If I die, I know that God will care for my family. If I die, I know, like, I can trust him completely. Which is not the same thing. Like you were saying, it's not the same thing as being reckless. It's not, it's actually just the deepest level of confidence that
Yeah.
you need to have,
Which
that you're
is what
not
I mean
going to
about, like, the
accidentally
terror.
die.
I have no problem with prudence, but the terror and the fear and
Yeah.
the just...
And the fear mongering.
Yes, all of that should be really antithetical to faith. And I think it's been kind of real embarrassing to see that for many Christians, they apparently never thought about it, the rubber hitting the road in...
Yeah, like
in that
actually,
way.
like your faith actually being the thing that you were. Are we about to go? No, we have a little bit more time. I want to touch on something I think we should talk on next time. Does that matter to you?
No.
If I open up a larger kettle of fish that I
But
only
just to
thought
say, we'll talk about that another
of.
time.
No, I think we should start talking about it, but I think that we don't have that much time, so
all right,
we
well-
might. I'm not. Now watch us be total duds with nothing to say about it.
Okay.
So this has come up recently, a couple different times and I've had some conversations with people. So this is a huge topic, but it is about a response that this podcast provokes in people. So
Okay.
when I say this podcast, our listeners all know, I can't imagine you not having picked up on the fact that this is an unedited, unplanned production. So we're not really giving you
As well
our-
as we hide that.
Yeah, in
Sometimes.
spite of the fact that I yawn in every episode just to make you think we're really prepared. And in spite of the fact that I think it's self-evidently not polished, which means that it is self-evidently honest. It is actually how we are living. That's what I'm
Okay.
saying. We're not putting our shiniest,
No.
pretendiest face forward. But the question that had come up from groups of Christians in other places is sort of like, how is this, it's hard. It's basically like, is it actually real that you're actually this joyful?
What?
Yeah, I know. You're having the same question I had when this came up. The reason I had that question is I feel like it's pretty clear that we're talking about our turkey attitudes and how we're tired of stuff all the time. So I don't feel like we're not putting forward a presentation that our lives are an endless giggle.
Okay.
Where we're not tempted by it. I don't know. It's just so I was thinking about that. I was thinking about what is the answer to that. Like, I think that this podcast is very honest to the way that we're living.
Mm-hmm.
I know.
Well, yeah, if anything, I think we try to censor it down just a little bit from the sort of, I don't know, like, we don't whoop about everything on the podcast that we might whoop about in private.
No, that part's true. But the reality is we're not sharing on the podcast things that I might share with Becca that is specific to a struggle that I'm having. But even off the airwaves, if I was telling you about a particular struggle, in all likelihood, we'd be laughing about it or talking about it the same way.
Oh, yeah.
So, I guess what I'm trying to say is, as I was thinking about this, what is the, there are people who think that what we're doing is somehow, like, I really struggle to get this across. Not that it's fake, but that maybe it's fake, and that maybe we're telling people to live in a way that's actually impossible. That it's actually impossible to live like this. And as I explored this topic, thinking about it and chatting with some friends about it, the thing that I think it comes down to is that your doctrine is meant to be lived. That your doctrine is not like that what we believe about God. And this is why I just thought of this, because you were talking about that.
Okay.
You were talking about Christians not fearing death.
Yeah.
That's a doctrine.
Yeah.
And it's meant to meet reality. It's meant to meet it's meant to be in your life, in your actual physical response to a fear-mongering article on the internet.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you believe that. So this is how you will believe that in this moment.
Okay, so maybe this is sort of what you're talking about, maybe not, but I have been really surprised by this is like people I don't know at all. It's just Christians you see on, from very far away, social media, whatever. I've been really shocked at, honestly, some people who identify as real doctrine wizards, in terms of like, law, like this is what I do. My hobby is parsing doctrinal.
No, it's like the kind of people who would have their byline be theology wonk.
Yeah, or like, here's the stack of doctrinal materials that I keep on my bedside table. So, okay, fine and good. There's that, but
nothing wrong with the love of doctrine.
The thing that has shocked me in various places, this is not like I saw it once. This is like a thing. Mm-hmm. Is you have, I'm reformed, and I post J.C. Ryle quotes, and then I will talk about my depression and I can't get out of bed, and then I'll talk about the really filthy shows I'm watching, and then I'll talk about how I screamed at my children, and then I'll put up another doctrine quote, and then I will talk about some big coarse jests and be really crass.
Was that pointed at me back then?
And then I will, I mean, and I've just been thinking, like, when you read those doctrines,
harmonize your beliefs.
When you read those doctrine books, do you ever think about how it might apply?
No, like, have you considered that your doctrine is not meant to be lived in the airs above the grounds?
Right.
It is supposed to be in your life.
Right. And so you have people who are like clearly a train wreck in terms of like practical everyday joy.
Right.
And then somehow
but they have a taste for theology. And interestingly, good taste in theology. Like their theology might be great.
Except for that
why have you not done something about that?
It kind of feels to me like people who get into Star Trek in a huge way probably bring more practical application to their daily lives.
Right. And
because they dress up sometimes and go to weird conventions.
Right. They at least invested in the costume.
The costumery.
So I think that the thing I'm trying to get at is that, like, there's an element where I just feel like we can't possibly, we are the product of a Christian community. Like, we grew up in a family that embraced this for our whole lives. Like, it's very hard to get on the other side of it and see it, like, what people are asking about. And because I don't feel like saying your doctrine should be lived does not take any of the normal struggle of life out of your life. But it does infuse a tremendous amount of peace and confidence and joy.
Yeah.
And when we have gone through really major trials as a family, like with Nate's brain tumor, or when Dad had cancer, when we had these things, we still had a lot of joy and laughter, and as a family, like, that was still the case, because we actually still believed what we believed.
That's the thing, is because we actually have a doctrinal commitment to that.
Right. And so I think that there's something about, like, the way gears work.
Yeah.
That there will be like a little wheel with the teeth on it that turns a big wheel that turns something else. I think that a lot of Christians have let their doctrine be a little wheel that's making no contact with the big teeth of a gear.
Right.
That actually makes your daily decisions, that's actually like informing what you're doing. Now, it's not. It kind of sounds like a weird, like, I imagine if you haven't been thinking about how does my doctrine affect my behavior right now, that might seem like a really complicated proposal. That, like, you should be living by your doctrine. Mm-hmm. But, in spite of the fact that sounds complicated, it's infinitely less complicated than living your life according to one, because you are living according to a set of principles and beliefs.
Oh, yeah.
And you want that to be God's word, and the Christian faith. And if you're thinking that sounds so difficult to get the Christian faith into that place in my life, you have to recognize that something is in that place.
Yep.
Right? So if you believe you have that wheel turning that's driving your daily behavior, your conversation. Like every human has that. We're not proposing a totally different mechanism for life.
Right.
We're proposing the correct driver, the right wheel that you want going there. So, if it seems like this is a complicated way to try to think about it, the thing I'm trying to say, and this is what I did in Yoo-Hoo. This was the goal of Yoo-Hoo, is to say, let's talk about Christian identity. But first we have to acknowledge that the piece that you have as a mechanism in your life may not be godly. Like, you may be making decisions based on a false assumption of who you are and how that, and so you can't just say, oh, let's just add in this. Like, no, it needs to replace that belief.
Yeah.
And I think that, so I've gotten messages from people probably because of Yoo-Hoo, I don't know. I just have heard from people who say things like, are you serious that I shouldn't vent and complain about my husband to my mom or to my friends? You know, are you really proposing that I stop complaining about my husband to everyone?
Right.
And when I've said yes, I am in fact proposing that. And when I've talked with some of these women, it's not that they think that exists by itself. They're venting and complaining about their husband because they believe that's the only way to relieve the pain of this situation and be able to move into catharsis and back into being kind to him again.
Right.
They're actually sinning in that way because they're trying to turn the wheel to keep their life going. And it's not that we're saying, no, you can't keep your life going. We're saying, process this in a way that is consistent with your statement of faith, with what you believe about God. So anyways, I really think we should talk more about this, because I have more specific questions that came up in this conversation that was more like,
well, let's talk about that next time.
Yeah, I think we should. And in the meantime, if you have a question related to that, send it to us, because I think this is kind of the heart of the matter. And I think that many of you who enjoy the podcast and listening to it like it because of the fact that we like to connect everything to our faith, right? Because that this is actually that, yes, we might be talking about some other shenanigans, but we still think all the gears of our life connect back to what we believe about God. Right. And we think that yours do too. And that
they ought to,
and that they ought to, and that we can, and that there are ways of looking back over that and seeing like, oh, okay, this is where this lie has snuck in, or this is whatever. Okay, do you have a tip?
Well, you can see I'm prepared for that question.
I've already given all mine. The Cornell Bird app that doesn't make me smart yet.
Okay, there you go, guys. There you go.
I actually would say, though, you could put a tip on that. Pick some random thing that you haven't been glorifying God in because you haven't been looking at it. You know what I mean? Whether it's your gardening or birds or worms or whatever it is, look for the things that are right around you that you failed. You just haven't.
Yeah.
You haven't appreciated the depth of God's kindness to us in those things.
Yep.
Anything else you want to say?
I think that sums it up.
I feel like I ended up going on a bit of a lecture series there at the end, saying too much. But we'll come back to this topic, though, because I'm kind of excited about it.
Sounds good.
All right. We'll talk later.
Bye.
Bye.